Hi, my name is Steve Rahi. I am a cloud solutions architect specializing in management technologies. Today's discussion is focused on Intune and specifically the topic of derived credentials. So before we get far into this session, I want to recognize Pat Fetty, who is a peer of mine, has really done some good work to get some of the things that I'm going to show you today kind of worked out. And I'll explain what I mean more as I go along, but very much kudos to him and thank you, Pat, for the work that you were doing or that you've done to get the demo environment worked out for what we're going to see today. And so that said, here's what we're going to do, right? We're going to dive into this typical agenda. So what are derived credentials? Why do we care about them? We're going to talk about the 3 derived credential providers. And then for each one, the plan is to hit requirements and how the process works, configuring those, watch in action, and then wrap up with the troubleshooting tips and tricks. Now, I'm going to say this here at the beginning, right? At the time of this recording, the initial recording. So it may change, in the future, and I may edit the recording to have it change. But at the time of this recording, there are 3 issuers, and the only one of the 3 issuers that I can demonstrate to you is there's only one, right? So you'll only see one. My intention is to hopefully build out the other sections as some demo situations become available. But just saying that at the outset, you may watch this video at a point down the road where maybe I've built out more than one. But at the time this is being recorded initially, this section, there's only one I'm going to be able to show you. So we'll see how that goes going forward. But I do want to walk through this one because it is very helpful to understand the process. All right, so jumping right into the meat of the session. So what exactly are derived credentials? So derived credentials, very simply, are the process of taking credentials like you might have on a smart card or a just user cert, right? Oftentimes known as a PIV type authentication, and going through a process that enables you to use that on an iOS device, an Android device, some other kind of device, right? And that process is you can think of it as you're deriving your credentials for use in those scenarios from your PIV card or something like, at least that's the way that makes sense to me, right? This process is one that is an implementation of the National Institutes of Standards and Technologies, their guidance on using PIV credentials, right? So that's where this came from, and that's what we adhere to, right? And so that's what derived credentials are. So why do you care about derived credentials? Well, of course, you want to have the security that your PIV card provides you, your authentication flow provides you. Also, there are environmental requirements that may dictate that you use a PIV, right? So this works right alongside that to help you adhere to the requirements your organization may have for how you work on your devices. Okay, so there are 3 derived credential providers. One is an organization called DISA Purebred. I'll probably just refer to them as Purebred as we go along. I may also refer to them as Redhound software. You'll see Redhound software in demos that come up. This is the one that I will be demonstrating. So earlier I said at the time of this recording I only had one to demonstrate, and at the time of this recording, the DISA Purebred or Redhound software is that one that I will demonstrate. Right? Again, if you're listening to this and I've added the other 2, then you will see that I've added another 1 or 2 as we go along. But at least as of this initial recording, that's the case. Right? The other 2 are Intercede and Entrust. And so those are the 3 that we will look at. So all derived credential issuers do support iOS, Android, and Windows. In the context of this discussion, We really think about iOS and Android, and also in the context of this discussion, we think about iOS because that's the one I'm going to be showing you. The process is really similar for Android, but I'm going to show you iOS. Windows, there's only a couple of scenarios, one of which we document at the time of this recording is not working correctly. So I'm really not going to show you Windows, but again, the concept is similar. All right. So now shifting our focus to DISA Purebred. That's where we're going to stay for the bulk of this session, right? Basically, the rest of the session we're going to be focused on DISA Purebred or Purebred, how you set up that particular issue, right? Okay, so jumping straight in. Let's talk about, first of all, the requirements. So pretty easy. We need a supported platform. So that will be iOS, that will be Android, that will be Windows. Again, our focus will be on iOS because that's where we're going to demonstrate how this works. We do need, depending on the platform, there's apps that are required. For iOS, that's going to be Company Portal, right? You'll see how that comes to play later on. For Android, that's going to be the Intune app, right? So for our demonstrations today, you will see me working in the Company Portal, okay? All right, so before we jump into this, I tried to lay this out graphically to help explain what you're going to see. So let me walk through this. Plus, let me just tell you at the outset, too, that the process that you're going to see is a full process. But at the end of the process, the certificates that I have on my device, while they are certificates provided by the Flow, they're not really functional certs, right? They're for demo purposes only, just because I just need to show the process, right? I wouldn't use these certs. These certs would not be usable in a production environment. If you follow the process for you, they would be, right? But for my demo lab, they aren't, right? Okay, so let me try to break down this graphic a little bit. And apologies, this probably isn't perfect, but it's hopefully going to communicate the point. So when we get started, right, there's a couple of things we need to do. First, we need to enable derived credentials. So, as we go into this slide too, there's a couple of different personas that I will be talking about and thinking about as I work through this process. There's really three personas that I think about, right? Two of which are referred to kind of as user. Well, really it's one, right? So this user is truly an end user, right? This agent is, in this case, a representative from Red Hat Software, or the Purebred agent is what they're called. I'll explain that more in a minute. But there's three personas that I think about. The third one would be the Intune admin themselves, right? So as I work through these steps, I'm currently in the context of the Intune administrator themselves, and I'll tell you when I shift to another context and how things work, right? So as the Intune admin, you need to enable derived credentials for your tenant and also for the devices that will participate in derived credentials. So you have to do two things, and likely you'll do these things before you ever get started. In fact, you will do these things before you ever get started in the process. So that's item number one. Enable derived credentials for the tenant, enable derived credentials for your devices that you want this to be enabled on. So inferred in that, but just to say it, you don't have to turn this on for every single device. You can enable it on just those devices where you want to. So when you turn on derived credentials and enable it, you will enable it for the entire tenant. But then when you use your configuration profile to enable it on the device, that process will determine which devices actually participate in derived credentials. Okay, the next thing you need to do as the Intune admin is deploy, in this case, the DISA Purebred app, right? So that's going to be deployed through Intune to the devices that you want to participate in this process. And then there will be some configuration that you need to do for this app. I will show you how to do it manually. In at scale production purposes, you will use an app configuration profile, right? And you'll have that done out there. So this is all the pre-work that you will get done send it down to your devices with this yellow arrow. That's what I'm kind of trying to show you. Once you have all of that done, then your devices are ready to become enrolled into Derived Credentials. Now, let me tell you that doing items 1 and 2, that's not all the configuration you're going to need to do in Intune. I'll show you the rest of the configuration that you might need to do in Intune. The additional configuration you would do in Intune would be to enable the use of Derived Credentials in certain areas, like maybe VPN, configuring a VPN, and using Derived Credentials for authentication there, or configuring a Wi-Fi profile and using Derived Credentials as an authentication mechanism there. But these two are and you'll do that later, right? You might do it now, depending on how you want to set up your tenant. But these are the ones you have to do before you can start the enrollment process in Derived Credentials with Purebred. Hoping that makes sense, right? So this was all done under the context of the Intune administrator. Now, there's another part that I don't really show here. I'll show it to you as we get into the demo. But there's certain certificates that you will need to have on your devices, right? And that's where we start talking about the user persona and the Purebred agent persona, right? There's certain things that you will need to do as a user on the device. The user on the device has to step through enrollment processes to get their device enrolled in Derived Credentials, right? Normally in production, this is the only part you would care about. But there's also a second part, and it's an employee at Purebred, Red Hat Software, whatever, to work with you in the process to get your device prepared for enrollment, right? So there's actually some back and forth that will happen between the user and the what's called the Purebred agent. You'll see that, right? At the end of it, there will be some certificates that are ready for your devices, right? For your device. So this certificate is going to be ready, or this set of whatever it is from Purebred is going to be ready for your device, right? And so that these certs need to make their way down to the device, and so that's where the company portal will come in. So these certs through Intune will come down through the company portal on iOS or the Intune app on Android, and then the device will accept the certs, right? Now, one thing I forgot to say at the beginning, there is a requirement to use your PIV to authenticate, right? That's how you kind of show who you are, how the process starts, whatever. And so in that case, you might have a kiosk or a PC where the user can use their PIV card to kind of get that process started. Actually, there's also requirements, which I'll show you, and hopefully this will all kind of line up and make sense as we get through the demo. There's also a requirement that the user have certain certificates from Purebred on their device, on their Windows device, so that they can actually authenticate with the Purebred website as they're going through this process. So as the user's going through this process right here, they will need certificates that will allow them to authenticate with the Red Hat Software website to enroll their device, right? The certificates are obtained from here, and I'll show them to you as we step into the next section, right? Okay, so my attempt at the graphic, hopefully it makes a little bit of sense, and then as I go through the process, hopefully it will make a little bit more sense. So that said, let's just kind of step into the demo, and we'll see where we go. So to do that, I'm going to open the Intune portal. Here's the Intune portal. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to enable Derived Credentials. So to do that, I'm going to go first to Tenant Administration. And then under Tenant Administration, I have Connectors and Tokens. And then under Connectors and Tokens, at the very bottom, I have Derived Credentials, right? So if you go into derived credentials, mine's already set up, but what you would have is the ability to configure it. So here I'm just calling this Enable Purebred, and I've selected Purebred as the issuer. Here's a URL that I can put in place if I want to provide some other additional information. This could be whatever you want. I just put in the Red Hound software link. And then how do I want to notify the end user? At certain points along the way, there will be notifications that the user will need to see to know what to do, right? So you have a couple of options. I've chosen both. So on iOS, that will be Company Portal. Could be Intune app on Android. And you can also enable email. I'll try to show you the notifications on both, if I remember right, as we go along through the process. One thing that I will tell you here as well, if you enable, this is a tenant-wide setting. If you enable a particular issuer, right, and then later, and go ahead and configure things or not configure them, whatever, but later you want to change the issuer, then basically you have to start completely from scratch. It's not simply a matter of deleting here and then choosing your new issuer and going forward, because every other configuration you've made is based on your choice here. And so you will need to clear out everything related to this issuer and this derived credential configuration and do everything again from the beginning with the new derived credential issuer, right? Okay, and then so this is enabling it for the tenant. Now you need to also enable derived credentials on the managed device or devices, right? So to do that, I'm going to use a configuration profile. So we go to devices. I'm going to focus in on iOS here because that's what I'm doing, and I'm going to go down to configuration profiles. And I've got a few set up here, but the one that I'm interested in right now is this, enable derived credentials, right? So there's really nothing to this. I've got this deployed, it's out there, it's enabled. I'll show you how easy it is. Just go and choose templates that I'm going to show derived credential. Did I get that? Yes. Okay. And create. I'll give it a name. And then next, and you will see there's absolutely nothing to configure, right? All you need to do is assign it, right? So there's nothing here, nothing to do, right? So all you have to do is assign it. So that's really, really easy. I've already got that assigned. So with those two actions done, then derived credential or the preparation for derived credential is ready on my device. Now there's a third thing that I need to do as well. And let me just go here and show you. So if I go back to apps, right? So another thing that I need to do to get the device ready to go through the enrollment process, and I may be doing some of this a little bit out of order of what you would do it, right? But hopefully it all stitches together and you can you understand what I'm doing, and the process as you do it will make sense. So here I'm showing apps for iOS and Android. And what I've got is the Purebred registration app. So this needs to be deployed to your iOS devices. And there would be one also to deploy to your Android devices, right? So I've done that. I've already made this a requirement, and it's ready to go, right? It's ready to go. In fact, I probably did jump ahead a little bit too much, so I'll kind of go back into my flow. So I showed you this, but pretend that all you see right now is that the tenant is configured and the configuration profile is out there for enabling derived credentials out on your iOS and Android device. So showing you the app is absolutely part of the required process, but in the flow of events, I probably jumped the gun a little bit, and I'll show you why I jumped the gun a little bit whenever I describe that to you. Okay, so before I continue in the process, I described that in order to interact with the Red Hound software website, you need to have credentials that identify you as the user of the device. So again, there's three personas. There's the Intune administrator, there's the device user, and then there's the actual employee at Purebred that works in this process as well. Again, to explain, I'm fulfilling in this demo all three roles. In a real world scenario, you would have individual people in all three roles that have to kind of coordinate, right? But to show you the process, I'm fulfilling all three roles. So in order to provision a user so that they can actually interact with the Purebred website, that user needs to have certificates available to them on a computer when they access that website. Now, the process of getting those certs, I'm not going to dig into. I'm really not going to get into the process of loading those certs either. But I do want to show you, because it's a really easy process. You just basically double click on the cert and provide the password whenever you're asked. But I do want to show you that those certs are installed on my machine. All right, so this is my Windows machine. If I go under personal certs, then you'll see that I have 4 certs for Intune test. Now, normally, this would be the name, pardon me, of the user actually who owns the device or has the device and will be enrolling that device into Derived Credentials, right? So normally in production, that would be for me, Steve Rahi, because that's who I am, and I would be enrolling my devices, or whoever the person is. In this case, since this is a demo lab, there is no specific user, and so the username chosen was Intune test. So that's why you see this. Then there's other certs that will be on my machine to fulfill the role of the Purebred agent. In production, you would not have these. You don't need these in a production environment. These would be certs that the folks at Purebred need to get their role done, and they would have these, but you wouldn't need them. Here, because I'm doing the demo, I do have both sets, right? Also, I want to show you, because this is very, very critical, there is a value on the certs that you need to have in place or have kind of copied down because you'll use it. And you'll see that it's present actually on both the user certs and the Purebred agent certs, right? Because they have to kind of have to match. And that's this number right here, right? This number right here. And so to get that number, you can write it down from here for sure. But to get it, just go into the cert and go to subject. And on the subject, you can highlight this and copy it out. And so I'm just going to put it out on my clipboard. I will use it again in a moment. All right, let me just put that up in Notepad for a minute. There we go. All right, so I'll come back to that in Notepad in a moment because I will need it again. Okay, so again, you would get the search, you would load the search by double-clicking on them. You would come in here, you could access it and get it from here. But I have that number, that's what I need, and I'm going to go ahead and close this. Now, I'm going to go now, again, I'm in the context still of the Intune administrator. Right? I have not shifted to the user context. Yes, the certs that I just showed you, those would be provided to the user. But I'm still in the Intune portal as the Intune admin. What I'm about to do, I'm still as in the context of the Intune admin. And what I'm about to do is go over to, do I have it loaded? I don't think I do. Nope. So I'm going to go to, I'm going to open up a browser. Actually, I need this in private, so I'll open up an in private session. Get rid of this not in private. And what I'm going to do now, under the context of the Intune administrator, is I'm going to go to downloads.redhoundsoftware.com. Right? Now, it's very important, probably not so important for here, but for just make it a habit when you're working with the Red Hound software website to make sure you have HTTPS at front. If you don't, then it's going to kind of at least for me, it kind of makes things not work. I'll show you that in a minute. But I'm going to go to Red Hat Software. I was the Intune administrator right here. Actually, let me just go directly to the URL that I care about. Here, let me just paste the whole thing. Right, I'm going to go to this URL. And it's going to be unofficial Purebred app distribution site. Right? And so here, there's a couple of things that I need to do. I'm going to go under development and then scroll down, and you're going to see app builds. So here, I need to actually download the Purebred app that you saw me set up in Intune a moment ago, right? So there's multiple versions. There's iOS builds, there's a UWP builds, there's Android builds, and this website actually caused me to pause for about 45 minutes until I realized what I was doing wrong, right? So if I were to, like, for example, if I wanted to download the Android, I would click this link, and I would download the app, right? So I would get the APK and so on. That's great, right? That's exactly what I would want to do if I were trying to set up the app for Android, which I'm not right now. I'm trying to do iOS, right? And by the way, make sure you always get at the bottom the latest version. And so I tried to go to iOS. I'm like, okay, I'll click this and do the same thing, except it takes you here, which seems really odd. I'm like, well, why am I not getting the download? And so it took me a minute to realize, because there's two links here. There's this link and there's this link, right? They're right next to each other. And it's not that way down below. It's just for iOS, which is interesting. So if I click the IPA, then I will actually download the IPA, right? And so that's what I will need to have in order to deploy that app to my devices that will enroll in Purebred. So that's one thing. Now, another thing that I will need, and I've already got it, so you'll see it. Another thing that I need is these devices that I'm going to enroll into Derived Credentials will need to trust certificates that are issued by Red Hat Software, by this process, right? So I already mentioned that at the ultimate goal of this entire process is to have Purebred issue certificates to your device to enroll that device in the Derived Credential process. And in order for your device to accept those certificates from Purebred, you'll need to have their trusted root certificate on your device so that those certificates will work. And that's here, right? It may be different as time goes on and they add additional entries here, but for right now, this is where it is. So you need to download that as well. I've already got it, so no need, but that's the process, right? Okay, so now that I've done that, so I'm going to minimize this because I'll come back to it. Now that I've done that, then I need to do two things. I need to deploy the settings to my device. I need to make sure that the device has the trusted root cert deployed to it. I also need to deploy the app, right? So back in the Intune portal, so here I am still in the configuration profiles. So I do have this trusted root certificate deployed to enable Derived Credentials. It's really easy. So if I just click on trusted root, the configuration of trusted root is really easy. There's a couple of successes I've done so far just from previous testing. Right? If I scroll down, you'll see the settings here are to deploy my trusted root cert. So all I had to do was browse to this file and import it into Intune, and then create an assignment, and in my case it's to all devices, right? So that root cert will show up on my device, right? The other thing that I need to do, I've already shown you, but I'll show it to you again. I'm going to go down to iOS apps and show all apps, and then you'll see that I have this Purebred registration. So all I've done is imported that. I've got it deployed successfully. And you can see, again, not not a ton of configuration needed. I just took the default properties that come in with the app, and I assigned it, in my case, again, to all devices. And that's really it, right? And so, okay, so let me pause here, right? What I've done as the Intune administrator, I've enabled derived credentials for my tenant using Purebred. I've also enabled derived credentials on my managed iOS devices that I care about in this test, right? So I did those two. Then I've downloaded and deployed the Purebred app to my managed device, or to my iOS device. And I've also deployed the trusted root key from Purebred to my device, right? So now I need to pause in this process and kind of go visually confirm that I do have the components that I need on my iOS device, right? So let me pull in the iOS device that I'm using for demo and show it to you. All right, so let me go find that iOS device. Here it is. So here's my iPhone, right? So there's a couple of places that I want to validate that I've actually have the components deployed that need to be there. There's really two places. One is I have the Purebred app. So that did, in fact, get downloaded. But before I can actually move forward in this process, I need to make sure that the Purebred app is configured in a way that will work for configuration, for setting things up. So to do that, this is manually. This is certainly not something you would do at scale. I'll show you that in a second. This is something that you would do maybe just to validate, test, whatever. This is not something your users even should have to worry about. This is something you as an Intune admin should take care of for them, right? But let me show you the manual configurations that you're going to do and then how to do those at scale. So under the settings app, I'm going to scroll all the way to the bottom in my case, and here's the Purebred registration app. So I'm going to tap on it, and there's a couple of things that you need to make sure are turned on. So first, there's this disable UKM bounce. That needs to be, slider needs to be enabled, right? And then at the very, very bottom, there's this group of 4 settings that these need to be enabled, right? So those are enabled, and we should be good, right? There's another thing, I'll show you how to do that at scale in just a second, but there's another thing that while we're in settings, we need to make sure that we're good. So let's go under General, and then click on About, and then at the very bottom of the page, there's Certificate Trust Settings. And so what I need to make sure of is that I do have this cert provision. This is that cert from Purebred that I downloaded that will allow this device to trust any certs issued from Purebred. So it is here. It is enabled. This should be enabled by default, most likely. There are some versions, I'm told, of iPhone where this would not be enabled by default. I've not seen one, right? But just make sure as you're setting this up as your Intune admin to validate on different versions of iOS that are in play in your org that this responds by enabling by default, right? If it's not enabled by default, it needs to be enabled by default, and that might be part of the instructions you would give to your end users if you find a version where this does not get enabled by default, right? Okay, so we will leave the iPhone at this screen for a moment and come back to it for sure. Let's pull it over to the side. And so talking about configuring that app, this Purebred app, you certainly aren't going to want to have the users go in and set those settings and whatever. It'd probably be easier on the user to do it for them. And so let's show you how to do that at scale. So if I go to my app configuration policies, you'll see an app configuration set that I built to show at least configuring 4 of those 5 settings. I didn't find the 5th one, but I stopped looking. But still, this will give you an idea. Here's my configuration profile for the Purebred app where I can set these settings. So if I scroll down, look at properties here. I look at properties of the app and scroll down to settings. You'll see that I have these 4 of the 5 settings here. I could do the 5th one here too, configured with a Boolean value of true. So that's basically saying the slider is enabled. Now, here's another point where I tried to set this up, and I'm like, why is this not working? This is weird, right? So Intune requires that these be lowercase, all of them, not a capital T, not a capital F, right? If you put capital T true or capital F false, if you did that, then that's going to error out whenever you put in your Boolean settings. So make sure you use lowercase true, lowercase false. In this case, all lowercase true. So this is how you would configure the Purebred app at scale, right? At scale. So okay, all of this done in the context of the Intune admin. I'm about to shift that though, and so I'm going to minimize this. We'll come back to Intune. I'll minimize this, and now what I'm about to do is start to shift into the context of going back and forth between the Purebred agent, the person at Purebred that would be part of the process, and then the user. So I'm shifting out of the Intune world into the user and the Purebred agent role. And now I'm going to go through the process that would happen to actually get this device that I've prepared enrolled into the process for having derived credentials totally configured out. So I have my in private session that I just had the browser open for. So I'm going to just open up another tab. And so this would be, first of all, let me go to, oh, by the way, let me show you. So if I go to, this is the URL that I want to go to, right? And I'm going to hit enter. And so the browser is just going to spin here for a minute, and it's going to error out and say that it can't get to the website, which I thought was really odd for a little bit, until I realized I need to put in place the HTTPS in front of the URL, right? I'll get an error if I keep waiting. There it is. There's the error. So, but if I put in HTTPS, even though it snaps back to this URL, it actually works this time, right? So be aware of that. I'm going to hit advanced. I'm going to say continue, right? The website is then going to prompt me. What certificate should I use, right? What certificate should I use? And so at this time, I'm going to be acting as if I'm the Purebred agent, the employee of Purebred. So I'm going to choose one of these Purebred agent certs. It doesn't matter which one to authenticate. So I'm authenticating to the Purebred website, the Red Hound software website, as if I were the Purebred employee. Obviously, your end user is not going to have to do this, right? But there will be this interchange between the Purebred agent and your end user. That needs to happen, as you'll see, right? So I just went ahead and accepted the warning about this being a government system, blah, 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 or having government information, blah, 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 right? Okay. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to also launch the Purebred app on my device. So here's my iPhone. So we'll be going back and forth. Right? Okay. So let's go over to the Purebred. Here's the Purebred app. I need to launch it. I'm going to get this government warning, and now I'm going to be asked for the EDIPI, right? This is what your user is going to be doing. The user will have the EDIPI. And so this is what I put down on Notepad a moment ago. So I'm going to go get Notepad and make sure I type this in correctly. So it should be 7555 888 176. 555 888 176. Right? Okay. So I'm going to hit continue once I do that. Right? Okay. So that's the user hitting continue. I can get rid of this now because I don't need it anymore. Don't save. All right. So I can close that. I'm going to take my iPhone and pull it over here. So hopefully we can interact. Right now, the Purebred agent is going to be interacting with the user, and the Purebred agent is going to go to the pre-enrollment OTP, right? The pre-enrollment OTP. Again, I'm under the context of the Purebred agent. The value that I see here is not going to need to be placed by the user into the app, right? So for ease, I'm just going to use the camera and capture that once I see it on the screen, right? So I'm going to click on pre-enrollment OTP, and so I have just a limited time to be able to get this done. So I'm going to use the camera app and hit OK, and that quickly enough captured the password, right? OK. So what happened here? Let's see. Let me see 1 second. Okay, very strange. So I made it to the next screen, and I realized why. I'm kind of surprised. But notice the EDIPI, pardon me here. So I entered with 176 because that's on my cert, but somehow it's 174. So that's why it was erroring out, right? So I went back and relaunched the Purebred app. In fact, I'll just show you that process again, right? Because that was a little bit weird to me, but I want to show you the whole thing. So if I go ahead and close my Purebred app and then relaunch it, so now I've changed to 174. Right? It was 176, 174. I need to go back and figure out why that was wrong, but either way, right? So if I hit continue, then I'm at the screen prompting me for the one-time password. So if I go to pre-enrollment, now I have that one-time password, and I'm going to use the camera to capture it. And now if I hit continue, it accepts it, right? So from there, I'm good. So now I need to continue. And so now I'm through with the pre-enrollment. So now I need to go to Workbench. Again, I am in the context still in the Purebred portal of the Purebred employee, right? So on the Workbench tab, it'll show up in history. You don't want history. You want just Workbench. So if I click on just Workbench, you will see that I have my device showing up here. You can confirm my serial number. You can confirm the certificate hash, whatever, right? And so now we just need to click this link to enroll. So this is my lab, so it's not got very many. In reality, this would have a bunch of entries, likely, right? And again, you wouldn't see this as the user. This is under the context of the Purebred agent. So the Purebred agent would click enroll. And so you're going to get this warning say, okay. And so now you get this next one-time password that you need to put in. This next one-time password you need to put in. So I'll use the camera here as well to capture it, right? So I've captured it, and I'm going to hit continue. So now we're downloading and processing configuration payloads onto the iOS device, and then we'll be able to go forward. So now we have yet another one-time password that we need to get, right? So you've entered that, and now we need to go to the Workbench History tab. So now we're here in Workbench History, or here, it says enrolled, not personalized. And so what we need to do here is actually personalize this so it's associated with you. And in this case, I'm just going to simply do an edit. And in the email, or you can use EDIPI. I actually had trouble using EDIPI, so I just used the email address. And this is not my email address. Remember, I'm under the context of Intune test. And so I'm using Intune at Microsoft.com as the email address. So normally this would be the user's email address, and I'm just going to hit save, right? So what I found out, if the email address is not one that is accepted, right, or not valid, then it won't even save that, right? It won't save it at all. So now it says personalized but not acknowledged, and so we need to acknowledge the change, right? And so that's cool. All we need to do now is shift into the user's context. Into the user's context. I haven't done anything with my Purebred app, but what I am going to do is close my portal, and then I'm going to launch a new one. I'm going to launch a new one. And now, this time, again, it has to be in private. Now I'm going to launch it under the context of the user, right? Of the user. So this is what the user would do. So HTTPS. Right? So good. I'm going to this. My connection is not private. Here I have to choose the cert again, and I'm going to choose this time Intune test. And the portal will open up, and I'll get the warning still, but it'll open up into a different context. See, I don't have all the choices up here. I do have my devices, so I'm going to click on my devices. And so here I see that I've got it in here. I need to generate a one-time passcode. This is basically me acknowledging that this is out there. Right? So, okay. And I'm going to use, again, the phone to capture a picture of the code, and I'm going to proceed. Success. All right. So that process is done. So effectively, my enrollment into Derived Credentials is 100% complete. And so at least on the app, and so I can just do everything I need to do from here, right? So I've got everything going. I can close the Purebred app too if I want to at this point. And now what needs to happen is the certificates need to actually be enrolled onto the device. So let me show you. I told you there's two ways you can get notifications. Let me show you. Let me show you one way. So one way is that you would send an email to your end user. So I'm actually going to log in to the email account of this user that I use for my lab. So, and I'm going to sign in with this user. Okay. And then I'll look at the emails that are waiting for me. Shouldn't be much. So here, action required. Retrieve your certificates, right, to sign and encrypt email. So this is sent to my inbox of the user that's trying to actually enroll the device. So I could go there, right? Or I can just go into Company Portal. Now, here's one thing. You might or might not have the ability to receive notifications to your phone, right? You might or might not have allowed Company Portal to actually send notifications to you, even though the Company Portal app may not be opened, right? But if you go into the Company Portal app and you go under notifications, you're going to see that I'm getting that third notification. My organization requires me to set up mobile smart cards before I can access work resources. So go ahead and set it up now. So I'm going to tap on that, and I'm going to say continue, right? And I'm going to import the certs. And so the certs are here. Now I'm at this screen. Right? And so I looked at this. I'm like, what is this? I don't know what to do here, right? But what you do is you will click on the bottom right icon, which will bring up your screen to enable you to access the area that you need to import these. So for some reason, I had to tap browse twice. I'm not sure why. Should be that it comes up the first time, but if not, tap it again, right? And you'll get to this screen where I'm browsing, and I'm going to tap on Purebred Keychain, and I'm going to turn on Purebred Keychain, and I'm going to tap on this and show that I can import the key. So on the bottom left, I'm going to import this key, and so it's going to go through the process and import my certs, and make sure you say allow paste, right? And then success, done, right? Okay, so my certs should be there, right? There. Now, okay, to validate that, I can confirm that my certs have been in fact delivered by going into my settings app And pardon me, scrolling down to general. Scrolling down to general. And then VPN and device management. And then management profile. And then more details. Right? And so then I will be able to look at the certs and I can validate that I have certs. So I'm continuing to scroll here. There's one cert. That's the trusted root cert. And then you can see, where are they? Should be here. Did I skip over? All right. Okay, so the search will be in here. Now, there's a couple of things. I want to jump ahead since I'm here to troubleshoot, right? Since we're in the iPhone, and then we'll move on to another thing or two. Right? Okay, so the troubleshooting information, kind of good to have. So if you do have a problem on a device and you need help, here, let me move the iPhone to the center. Actually, I'm going to go forward from configuring, right? But I'm in troubleshooting now. So if you do have trouble and you need help from the Purebred folks, if you just simply open the Purebred app and then you tap it 5 times, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, then you're going to get logging information that you can see about what's going on with the app. And so this is a really good place that you can actually copy it and send it out to them, right? You can just use the sharing tab, and however you want to share it, you can get it to the Purebred team, and they can help, try to figure out what's going on. Right? Okay, so another thing that's really helpful is to go to this website. In fact, let me copy this website and see. Come on, copy, and I'm going to close the browser just so you can see me get to it from scratch. Okay, so I'm going to put it back in. And so now it tells me I need to know what cert, right? So you know the cert's there because it's prompting you for it. So I'm just going to tap one, and it's going to bring up the screen. And you can use this screen to look at all sorts of good information about what's configured on the machine and blah, 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 on the device, whatever, right? So this is another good piece of troubleshooting to have. So I kind of jumped forward with that. So let me jump back, right? So since I had the iPhone, I wanted to go ahead and do that. But, so the entire enrollment process is done. The entire reason that you did the enrollment process is so that you could actually use that in your different configurations. So let's just kind of explore what that is. And we're going to do that in the context of iOS. That's where I have just some things configured. Nothing configured here is really working. I just configured a basic thing so I could show you, right? So let me go to my configuration profiles. Go here, devices, and then configuration profiles. Come on, load. There we go. iOS, configuration profiles. Okay. So I've got a few. The first is that, let's see. So when I configured this one, basically this enables derived credentials. This will help for doing things like app stuff and just enabling it in general. But there are other things that you need to do, like maybe you need to create for email so that you are using derived credentials for email. And so you can do that, right? Pretty easy. Just go through configuration settings. And if I don't care about all the rest of them, but what I do care about is that my authentication method I've set to derived credential, right? All the other ones I just put something there as a placeholder. Similarly, for VPN, again, don't care about the settings, but what I did do, or the settings in general, but what I did want to show you is that I have a authentication method, derived credential, right? And then last one is Wi-Fi. So for Wi-Fi, I also have an authentication method of derived credential, right? Here we go, right? So that's where you then start to use that. So once the derived credentials are provisioned, then you can use them, and you are good to go. Right? Okay, so that's in action. I showed you all of that for Purebred. I mentioned Interseed is another issuer. I don't have anything in a lab environment where I can show you that right now. Right, so maybe in the future I will, and maybe we will be able to add in here. Hopefully I can. We'll see. Same thing for Entrust. Right. Okay, so troubleshooting tips and tricks. I shared that with you already by showing you how to tap 5 times on the Purebred app to launch that logging. And then also the website, the https://t.pbpki.com to actually see some of those certs. So with that, a lot of moving parts, but really not that difficult once you do it. We'll wrap the session up here, and hopefully we'll be able to add the others in future edits to this, right? And maybe I've already added them. Whenever you're watching this and you're saying, "Wait, you've already added them," well, that's true. It's just because I've added them since I did the initial recording. Anyway, that's it for now, and we will see you